Good afternoon. It's time for another frolicking build, and this week I am working on the Lost in Space robot. One of many Lost in Space robots I planned to build. When they first came out, I was overjoyed. The Lost in Space robot is truly my grail kit. Now, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Trekkie now, but when I was a kid, I grew up watching Lost in Space. That's my dirty little secret. Was the youngest of many children and never had free reign of the television. One television in the house. I never got my pick, but when I did, the times I was available, I was watching Lost in Space. I actually watched a lot of Outer Limits and Lost in Space, but that's pretty much what I grew up on. Didn't catch on to Star Trek till they started rerunning it in about '71. So I may have seen a few original run Trek episodes, but I was not a regular watcher of Trek back then. I was watching Lost in Space. And while the Enterprise is great and I love it dearly, and I've come to claim it as my own favorite ship, not every kid could get the Enterprise, but every kid could have a robot, it seemed to me. I just identified with Will and wasn't nearly as smart or freckled, but wanted to have my own robot. And the Mobius kit of the robot is just a joy. I was actually able a couple of years ago at Wonderfest to touch the Precious, to actually handle a prototype of it that Dave had brought with him. And it was just a boyhood dream come true. And so when the models came out, I ordered myself up a bunch of them. And what I was going to do was, build a couple up for me, build up some for friends. And there's so many different lighting packages available for it now that what I've chosen to do is build one up with the Control set, build one up with the Voodoo Child board. I can build up one with, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it. The all-in-one module for the chest and the Big Dog card, which is what I'm doing first. And I was building the first robot in amongst other projects, and you may have seen it in the background, languishing in a box. But I finally pulled it out, made it front and center. But because so much of it was done already, I feel like I'd be cheating to show off a lot of the build of it. Frankly, I like building it off stage because it gives me a chance to screw up out of the public eye and not show those ones. And the first one is a learning, we'll just call it a learning exercise, finding out what paints work, what build order works, what kind of lighting works, what things I can paint in advance, what kind of things I need to paint later, how to tackle some seams. Those seams on the front of the feet are horrendous. I wish there was a better way to handle those other than just sanding and seaming and sanding and seaming. So I'm getting kind of all of those bugs done off stage, and when it comes time to build the next one, I will probably take a more ground up approach from the ground up, not grinding up the plastic, from a ground up approach on the building of it and make it an actual build log. But this first one, I'm just going to give you the highlights from. And as you can see from right here, I've got some arms a-drying. Now, there's been some flack and some talk about them being vinyl and what's the best way to deal with that. Well, you can always just leave them unpainted. They are close enough to the actual color. Depending on which version you're building, you can go nuts on how many variations you want to do. You can simply put a flat coat on them and call it macaroni. But what I've chosen to do is I have first hit it with something called Bulldog brand adhesion promoter, and that's, again, it's in the auto industry. It's in the O'Reilly Auto Parts or the Advanced Auto Parts. It's in the auto part paint line. It's called adhesion promoter, and it's meant for putting on paint on surfaces that don't typically get paint. And it adds a bit of tooth to the surface so that paint will stick to it. And then the next thing I did was to paint it with a vinyl paint. And again, that is another in the automotive line. It's meant for painting over vinyl surfaces. And they make a gray that is darn close to robot arm and leg gray. It's a little bit lighter. I don't know if you can tell the difference between that stub, the Porsche stub, and the rest of it. It's a little bit lighter than the actual plastic or the actual vinyl, which is, again, right into ballpark of robot arm and leg color. And then, as a last resort, I hit it with a Krylon flat finish. That's the way I'm treating the legs and arms and the bubble lifter of the first build. And that's the technique I'm going to, and that's the one I'm testing out. That seems to be the one that works the best for me. And that's what I'm trying out on this first build. And if it carries through and it works for me up until the very end result, that will be the way I do the rest of them as well. Welcome back. It is late Saturday afternoon. After hours of tedious finagling, I've managed to get the brain mostly wired. I am not doing anything with the little finger lights. I do not possess that level of skill. So I am trying to settle for doing the two different groups of lights that are in the top of the bubble. Those are the 3 amber lights that shine upwards, and then the 2 eyes that are cool whites that shine forward. So I'm going to do some shaky cam now and try to temporarily hook these up to a watch battery so you can see what it is that's lighting. Okay, hopefully you can see the first set of lights, which are the eye lights. And again, I'm just holding these down to a watch battery. There have not been resistors put on it yet, but that's the first section. Okay, hopefully you can see, there we go, the 3 amber lights that shine upwards from the top. Now it's pretty ugly. It needs to be cleaned up still, paint and patching and that kind of stuff. But that's the gist. I've notched it out a little bit more, made kind of a keyhole thing. That is so I can still use the pole piece, the center pole piece that they recommend, but be able to run the wiring, this wiring down behind it. I'm using fairly small gauge wiring, but still kind of nervous about it all fitting down. Success. There's the wiring coming down along the outside of that pole. Now I'll be able to camouflage that or hide it inside of the boot, and then what I'll do is I'll put another hole to same type of keyhole arrangement to the back of this to knock it out some, and then as the further we get down into the robot, the larger I can make the hole without having to worry too much about disguising it. The pinch point was right up there at the top of the dome. Everything else is gravy. So now that I know that that works, I need to pull the brain out and paint the finger lights and touch up the inside of the brain as much as ever is going to be touched up, and then I can glue the top of the dome on, I gotta put that little crown on there, and then the top of the dome. Here you can see the rest of the model as it exists in its various pieces and parts. The chest I have joined front and back and painted, seamed and all of that. Here's the top part painted. The claws, Santa and Mrs., are painted. Now this seam here is kind of troubling, and I need to touch over that with some paint. Here is much as I've got of the legs. I've kind of got those parts built onto those parts, and again That's all that same painting method. I used 1 minute epoxy to join the vinyl to the lower legs to the knee, and the upper legs to this turntable, bottom half of the turntable. I've got areas cut out inside for the wiring, and enough to make it so that the wiring won't get bound up when it goes side to side. I'm not going to be able to turn it all the way around and march off the other way. I'm going to restrict it to a 90 degrees left and right on this one, just so I don't have any wiring kinking. And let's see, where else am I? I've got, this is the big dog card I'm using for the voice. Each of these buttons activates, well, you can't hear it off the battery, but each of these will activate a different sound effect. I'm going to put that in a bass, and that bass will be where the board and the switches will be, but the speaker is going to be up inside the robot, and I'm going to run LEDs off of the speaker inputs to make the lights light up in the voice box. This is the lighting I'm using for the chest, and it is Mecha Labs. I am so sorry for forgetting your name earlier. This is the Mecha Labs. This is sweet. This is a one-piece, takes care of everything module that just simply plugs into the back of the chest, and the only thing that would have made this any better, I swear to God, if there was 2 things I would have added to make this any better, I would have put the one tiny light off of the bottom of this board that needs to go and light up this one. I can find it here. There's a light inside here that I'm using a tiny surface mount LED for. If they could have found a way to attach that to this board so that you could, run it down and push it out the thing right below here, and if they could have found a way to put the mouth lights in as a single unit just up here, then it would truly be an all-in-one board. As it is now, it's beautiful, and it's look at that, they even went to the trouble of staggering the heights of the LEDs on the bottom so that they conform to the curve of the front of the robot. I mean, you just don't have that kind of care and quality. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece. It's a little bit pricey, I'm not going to lie to you, but it is truly an all-in-one solution. And it's the best definition of plug and play I've ever seen. Let's see, here are the feet with the notorious bad seam in the front. I've done my best to try to get those minimized and cleaned. I will probably go over it with a sandpaper one more time before I join it to the rest of the kit. Here is the I don't know, the start of the bubble, assembly area. It's the part that goes right on there, and that bit is done, and the bubble lifter is done, and that leaves the brain. And the brain was what I was working on yesterday, and here it is to this point. Now I've got one set of lights for the eyes and another set of light for the 3 on the top. I still need to do some touch-up painting before I can encase this in the bubble. And I think the finger lights turned out pretty nice. Now those are just the kit parts. Those are not anything fancy, and I staggered them from the front so they're not all flat, because in real life they kind of move up and down, so I'm trying to catch them at various pitches and angles so that they don't look like they're all, just straight across. The true geniuses out there have found a way to light those individual finger lights, and if I get really brave on the next 2 or 3 builds, I may try that, but that's a little bit bigger chunk than I can bite off on this first one. But there's the brain. the crown for the brain. And this is the chest lights. You will still need to use these even if you're using this module, because they have single white lights here that don't stick out as far, plus they're not square. So you will need to chop that part off of the bottom, or off of that clear piece, and put it in the back of the, in from behind, put it where the, I guess they're calling those the teeth lights for some reason. And that's it for now. That's the extent. Here are the rings for the claws. I think what I'm going to do is try to I gotta touch up the paint on the claws and the rings. I want to do that. I want to work out how the lights are going to go in behind the mouth, and that's it. These ankle pieces I can put on once I get myself happy with, I think once I get myself happy with the feet, I'll go ahead and put those ankles in, but I don't need to do that right now. But that catches us up on the current state of the robot. Oh, the metal grills are also in from the inside on these packs. Now, I'm certainly not the first person to have this idea. It's been widely discussed, and I'm kind of surprised that Mobius didn't make a provision for it, but it's not really their job to figure out lighting for other people. It's the lighting people's job. But of course I'm going to make some sort of circuit interrupt with the power pack, so that when the power pack is pulled out, the lighting will not work. And when it won't be an on-off switch. I'll have on-off switches other places. This will be kind of like a fail-safe, that if you pull the plug, so to speak, it will turn off interrupt the circuits and turn off the robot. So that'll be a fun little feature. So that's the state of the robot for right now, and I will have more reports as it starts to fall together.